Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the free webinar session presented by the Doctoral Study Program Faculty of Medicine, Public Health and Nursing, Universitas Gajah Mada, in a collaboration with EdTech Health today on Wednesday, May 15, 2024. It is an honor for me, Yopi Darmawana, to be able to lead this seminar. I also welcome a handful of guests of honor who had attended this online webinar via the Aramid platform. First, I would like to say good afternoon to our beloved Dean, Professor Dr. Yodi Mahendrata. And then we also have Head of Doctoral Study Program, Faculty of Medicine, Public Health and Nursing, Universitas Gadjah Mada, Professor Adi Utarini. And then we also have distinguished guests from the EdTech, Mr. Daniel Pratipati as a director for institutional partnerships, and also our speaker for today's webinar, Dr. Oliver Grunvogel as an ex-BCG consultant for biotech, pharma, life science, and he also is expert in AI application for life sciences. And last but not least, we have our moderator, Dr. Diana Puspitasari, Master of Medical Education. So, ladies and gentlemen, in the previous webinar, we already discussed about the common challenges in writing journal publications in English. In this particular sessions, you will attend a seminar on the topic of the ethical use of artificial intelligence and professional editing services. As AI and professional editing become increasingly integral to academia, understanding their ethical implication is paramount. Today, we will explore how this technology can enhance academic work while upholding integrity and fairness. Our distinguished speakers will shed light on the best practices, potential pitfalls, and the balance between innovations and ethical responsibility. Let's embrace this opportunity to deepen our knowledge and commitment to ethical standards in our academic endeavors. And thank you for joining us, and I look forward for an engaging and enlightening sessions. I would like to invite all the participants who join with me. As I see on the platform, there will be more than 200 participants who already join with this seminars. You can give some short comments or another question on the chat box that already prepared by the committee. Ladies and gentlemen, before we join in the main session for this today's webinar, I would like to invite Professor Dr. Adi Utarani as a head of doctoral study program, Faculty of Medicine, Public Health and Nursing Universitas Gadjah Mada to have some short opening remarks.
Thank you, Yopi Darmawan. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon for participants from Indonesia. And again, welcome to our second session organized by the PhD study program in UGM in collaboration with EdTech. And to begin with, I would like to first thank our Dean of the Faculty of Medicine, Public Health and Nursing, Professor Yodi Mahendra Datta, MSc PhD, for his support, and a great appreciation to Mr. Daniel Pratipati, Director for Institutional Partnership from EdTech, and especially to our speaker today, Dr. Oliver Grunvogel. Having a good publication is very important to PhD students, but also to lecturers and scientists in general. We only have two options: to publish or to perish. And in a PhD program, it is common to have publication as a requirement for the students to complete the PhD degree program. And this is also a requirement in our PhD program in UGM. Therefore, to ensure that PhD students have the skills necessary to write a good manuscript is very critical. And we realize that for many students, this might be their first experience to write a manuscript for international publications. Fortunately, nowadays, tools are more available, including AI, a topic which is, I think, very important for all of us to understand. Therefore, this afternoon we will hear more about AI as a tool for us in order to be familiar, but then also more importantly for us to use it wisely and also ethically. So, with this, I would like to say let's learn together and enjoy the session. Thank you very much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much, Professor Adi Utareni. Let's learn together with our beloved speakers from Germany, if I'm not mistaken, and also our beloved participant, more than 200 participants here. And for the next session, I would like to invite Professor Yodi Mahendrata as a Dean for Faculty of Medicine, Public Health and Nursing, University of Jamada, to give welcoming remarks.
Thank you, Mas Yopi. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good afternoon, everyone. Let me start this remark with a short story. A few weeks ago, I submitted a manuscript to a top ranked medical journal. It came back swiftly with a note saying that if artificial intelligence was used in the writing of this manuscript, please declare it. Full stop. Now, I've been writing and submitting manuscript to journals for more than 20 years now, but I was not aware of this new standard policy. Apparently, journals now anticipate that more and more authors are using AI, so they demand transparency and responsible use of AI. And yes, I did actually use AI for editing the grammar, spelling, style, and so on, as I'm not a native speaker. So I declared the use of AI for editing and the reason, and I resubmit. It seems to be okay, and now process continued, waiting and hoping for positive response from the editor for more substantial feedbacks. So clearly, AI is changing the way we do research, changing the way we write, like how AI is changing so many aspects of our life. And these changes have implications for better or worse, which we need to be able to navigate wisely. So today's webinar really aims to help us navigate the scientific landscape which has been disrupted by AI. This webinar is a collaboration between our PhD program and Editage, and it represents not just a partnership in organizing a webinar, but it actually represents also our shared vision for a future where technology enhance our ability to solve complex health challenges. Now, these collaborations also underscore our shared commitment to integrating cutting edge technology and ethical practices in our research and professional endeavors. So, today we are honored to have Dr. Oliver Rundvogel with us, whose extensive background in molecular virology and passion for digital technology bridges the crucial gap between advanced scientific research and innovative digital solutions. Dr. Grunvogel's experience embodies the confluence of healthcare and technology, highlighting the transformative potential of digital tools in our field. So, as we proceed with today's session, I encourage each of you to engage actively, ask questions, express your thoughts, and take this opportunity to reflect on how you can personally and professionally contribute to an ethical approach in all of our scientific and research endeavors. So, let me end with a brief disclaimer. Last night, I asked ChatGPT 4 to draft this opening remark. I didn't like the draft, so I asked to revise twice. I still didn't like it. So I asked Quillbot to edit, paraphrase, and make it better several times. I still didn't like it. So this morning I end up rewriting this remark, but I'm sure these technologies will keep getting better and better. So in any case, we need to better prepare ourselves to harness AI's potential responsibly, ensuring that our scientific integrity remains intact and that our work continues to benefit humanity. Thank you, and I look forward to a productive discussion. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much, Prof. Yodi. And then before we join the main session for today's webinar, I would like to invite Mr. Daniel Pratipati as a Director for Institutional Partnership from Editech to give short introduction about the Editech and address the audience. Time is yours, Mr. Daniel.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Yopi. I just want to thank the esteemed panel in front of me, and just listening to the insightful remarks from Professor Yodi and Professor Adi was just so encouraging to know that we are talking about the right topic. This is the theme of our times, and I feel AI we're at the cusp of change in what AI can do, not just for research, but in every aspect of our lives. So I'm so glad that this is a topic that we're discussing today, and I'm just so happy that as Editage, we've been able to kind of grasp this and then bring this to discussion. So just want to thank the again the esteemed guests here, again to the dean Professor Yodi, and then Professor Adi, who's been a friend. I think with Editage, we were honored to have her as at our event in February at the beautiful campus at UGM. And in general, just so happy with our partnership with UGM, with the Faculty of Medicine. So encouraged to see, submissions, us being able to help the researchers there, the faculty and the students, and looking forward to many more years, of just partnering with the university and with the department, with the Faculty of Medicine. So thank you so much for having us. It's an honor for us as Editage to be here, and we feel we learn so much. Just being amongst you, just listening to you, and as much as we bring this training, we ourselves are trained. So it's an honor and a privilege to be bringing this session. Thank you for giving us your time. Just want to thank the others, Dr. Dian, Yopi from UGM, for supporting us. And then finally to Dr. Oliver for being our trainer today. I'm not going to say more. I'm sure he's going to bring much more in terms of insight and hopefully also a lively discussion. This is a live session. We're proud of that, and we would encourage you to take part actively. There is a chat window, so feel free to put your questions and your comments there, and let us know what you think about this session, and we'd love to bring more such sessions to you, and also on topics that you'd be interested in. So yeah, let's keep this interactive, and hopefully we can do several more like this in the coming few months. With that, I want to say thank you again, and wish you all the best for this session.
Thank you so much, Mr. Daniel, for your warming remarks. And then before we join the main session, I would like to introduce you to our moderator for today's sessions. We have Dr. Diana Puspitasari, Master of Medical Education. Currently, she is a doctoral student at the Faculty of Medicine, Public Health and Nursing, Universitas Gajah Mada. And Dr. Diana will be the moderator for these sessions. And I encourage you all participants to actively give some comments or question in the Q&A options. Once again, you can give the question on the Q&A option on the right of your Airmeet platform. Dr. Dian,
Yeah.
time is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Yopi, for your kind introduction. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Ethical Use of AI and Professional Editing Services. I am Dian Puspitasari, and I am delighted to have you all here for this important and timely discussion. First, I would like to extend a special thank you to Professor Adi Utarini, the head of the doctoral program, and Professor Yodi Mahendra Datta, the Dean of the Faculty of Medicine, Public Health and Nursing, Universitas Gajah Mada, for their insightful opening remarks. Their perspectives and experiences certainly lay a strong foundation for our discussion today. I would also like to acknowledge Mr. Daniel Pratipati and also Bapak Juventius Jaya from Editage for their support and presence today. And of course, a warm welcome to my fellow PhD students and all participants tuning in from across Indonesia. As scientific publication evolves, the integration of advanced technologies such as artificial intelligence alongside professional editing services presents great opportunities as well as significant ethical challenges. And our session today aims to explore these complexities, offering insights into how we can harness the power of AI responsibly and improve our writing with professional editing services while still maintaining the integrity and quality of scientific work. And we are honored to have Dr. Oliver Grunvogel with us. Dr. Grunvogel is a trained life scientist with a PhD in molecular virology and a passion for digital technology. He had a successful academic career at the universities of Ulm and Heidelberg, where he published several scientific papers. He then moved into consulting, focusing on digital technologies in healthcare and pharma, especially AI tools in R&D and operations. He also served as chief of staff for an AI company where he integrates science, medical, and technology efforts with business needs. Currently, he is a freelance consultant supporting biotech and life science companies on strategic topics. His extensive experience makes him uniquely qualified to discuss the ethical use of AI and professional editing services in scientific publication. But before we begin, I'd like to share a few housekeeping items. First, this session is being recorded and the recording will be available to the participants after the event. And there will be a Q&A session after the presentation, so we encourage your active participation. And you can use the Q&A feature to submit questions at any time. You can also ask questions in Bahasa Indonesia if you wish, and we will translate them for our speaker. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Oliver Grunvogel. Dr. Oliver, thank you for being here, and the time is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm really honored by the very kind introduction today. Really happy to be here and really happy to share some experiences and best practices, in a sense, for the use of AI, but also of the use for professional editing services. As was already pointed out, it's sometimes important to see where AI can be used, where it helps you, where it makes sense, and where sometimes it's important to know its limitations as well, and also how to use it ethically and with scientific integrity. So without going too much into detail here, I'm happy to introduce you to the topic and happy to take you through the topic today. And again, very honored to be here. Thank you for the very kind introductions. We've already heard a little bit about Editage. We've already heard a little bit about myself. Really feel flattered. Thank you very much. So I'll quickly skip that and go directly into the topic of what we will be discussing today. And we'll be heavily focusing on scientific publishing and how to use it and how to improve your experience in the area of scientific publishing. When we talk about AI and professional services, there are so many more topics that we can cover. Just looking at the entire idea of data analysis that has changed with the coming of age of machine learning technologies that are used in AI, or now with the generative AI boom, when I look at life sciences or any other discipline that is out there. Today, we're really focusing on what helps you and how it has changed and is changing and will continue to change the effort of scientific publishing. So quickly, as an introduction, I'll go through the process of scientific publishing, again, on the importance and where AI, but also professional editing services can be a great help to you. Then we'll go deeper first into use of AI tools in publishing process, then the use of editing services in the process of publishing, how to interact with them, how to use them at the right stages, and also knowing what they can and cannot do. And at the end, I'd also like to give you a perspective from the other side, what journals are employing today and will employ even more in the future in terms of AI tools, how their processes are changing, what we need to keep in mind when we are interacting with these journals, with the scientific publishing outlets that exist. So let's dive right in. Scientific publishing. First of all, as has already been pointed out, it is a very important process. It's an important step in the process of science, because it facilitates the dissemination of research findings. Without publishing, you probably wouldn't know what somebody else is doing, maybe just an institution over, and even worse when we think of the global landscape in science. You'd never know what somebody in Europe, what somebody in the US, what somebody anywhere in another country next to you would be doing. But not just in the publishing process itself, learning about other findings, it's also a process of validation of scientific findings by sharing them with the larger community, and through peer review, ensuring credibility and reliability of what has been presented in this. Therefore, it drives innovation and it drives advances in various fields through the process of knowledge sharing. And it contributes to societal progress in this way. This is something that we shouldn't forget. This is why we are all here, I think, PhD programs, also in our scientific careers. This is in the end why I think most of us became scientists in the first place. And we shouldn't forget that by this contribution to societal progress, we're also shaping public discourse. It influences decision-making. When you think of healthcare decisions that have, for example, had been taken during the COVID pandemic, you'll see how suddenly scientific advice and scientific opinions have a huge impact on people's lives. And not the least, publishing fosters the collaboration that we need all around the world. In interdisciplinary research, but also just by sharing and working with the colleagues that we have all over the world. These are also a lot of honorable ideas, but there's another reason that I really want to point this out to you today, and that is scientific publishing is critical to you, and it's important to you personally as a scientist, because it's vital for your career advancement and your academic progression. It's been nicely put in the introductions already. We have two options, it's publish or perish. And this is really true. This is how it goes in science today. You need to publish in order to get your findings out, but also to build your career, building an academic profile, securing funding opportunities, establishing credibility and the recognition you need within your field to establish yourself as a researcher. Plays a pivotal role in securing tenure, in securing promotions and future research opportunities within the same institutions, but also when you think of your next career steps that might take you to another institution as well. And also by publishing, you increase your visibility and you enhance your networking opportunities and your collaboration prospects with peers. So it is one of the key processes that you will need to go through in your academic career. And by making this more successful, maybe even a bit easier, maybe even a bit fun, it can really, really help you deal with this also sometimes very stressful topic. There are a couple of pitfalls with scientific publishing that can be avoided with proper preparation. There's a lot more reasons why things can go wrong, but some of the not necessarily the most common ones, but the most annoying ones that could have been avoided can already be pointed out now. And the first one is the topic of avoidable rejections. Manuscripts can be very rapidly rejected, or also after a long time rejected due to lack with the journal scope that you're submitting it to, by failing to adhere to technical guidelines or basic language and grammar skills. So it's unfortunate if the work that you've put a lot of lab time, a lot of research time into is rejected for a reason, a technical reason that could have been easily avoided. Also, failure to adhere to ethical guidelines and also to adhere to the proper process of citing of sources can result in accusations of plagiarism and especially damage to your reputation. So this needs to be avoided at all costs. And there's also a concerning trend over the last decades to predatory publishing, and authors may fall victim to predatory journals that exploit researchers for profit without providing any credible peer review. These couple of pitfalls need to be kept in mind, and a lot of these can also be supported by the two topics we covered today, AI tools, but also professional editing services. When we talk about scientific publishing.
Sorry for interrupting. There is a request from the audience. If you could please slow down the pace, because you're speaking a little bit faster. So they have a small request. Thank you.
All right. I apologize for that. I will slow down a little bit. And thank you for pointing this out early. I hope I can make this a better experience for you in this way. So when we talk about scientific publishing, I want to talk about the process that starts pretty early in manuscript preparation and goes all the way through publication. So we've probably, most of us might have already had some experience with it. If not, just in general, if we think of the publishing process, we start at the manuscript preparation. So before that, you need to conduct your research, gather your data. This can also be seen as part of the manuscript preparation, because sometimes you could turn around and plan what you want to present, at least the headlines and the chapters that you need to cover. So it informs your research strategy, so you know what you need to prove or disprove in your hypotheses and in your work. When you have that data and the necessary research done, you can write the manuscript. So that's a technical form of writing to synthesize your findings. And this needs to follow journal guidelines already at this stage. And then there's another step of formatting the manuscript into the requirements that are the journal that is set by the journal that you want to publish in. Next step is the first submission that you do. You submit the manuscript to the chosen journal. At this stage, the editor's office at the journal, so an editor-in-chief, an associate editor, will screen the manuscript, first to check if it aligns with the scope of the journal, and then also basic quality standards, both on the writing side, but also on the content side. If these criteria are not met at this stage, it may be rejected directly with a potential for resubmission, maybe even not. If it passes that first check, the editor will assign the manuscript to expert reviewers in the field. These are scientists like you at various stages of their career that will then evaluate the manuscript and provide comments. So it's looking at the quality, originality, methods, and also the significance and the importance of the paper. The reviewers provide you with written feedback, and they'll provide a recommendation whether to accept, to revise, or reject the manuscript in its current form. From experience, I've never seen a paper pass a submission right away. So expect at least a revision, and this is the most common case, that the authors need to revise the manuscript. This might entail additional experiments and research. It might also entail just a rewriting of certain parts of the manuscript without the need for additional experimentation, and a resubmission of the revised manuscript to the journal with a response to the reviewers. If it now meets the journal standards, it's accepted for publication. That does not mean that you are done at this stage. The manuscript still need to undergo copy editing, typesetting, and proofreading. And you may be required to approve the final version in the format it's going to be in. This is called a proof, where you then need to check that everything is correct, sometimes even finding typos and last-minute mistakes that need to be fixed. And only once that is done, the manuscript will be published in the journal, maybe in a written form, maybe as a PDF online, will be available to readers. And at this stage, you consider it done for that stage. In this process, there's a couple of points where AI or the professional editing services may come in. And this is especially true for you in the manuscript preparation, where both AI and editing services will come in. This is what we will spend most of our time on. That's chapters 1 and 2 that I will cover after this. But also on the editor side, the use of AI is heavily increasing in the journal and in the publishing industry. And this is also due to just the rise of numbers and publications that are coming in. So we'll cover a little bit how AI is being used there, so you are aware of potential pitfalls that might come up during the manuscript preparation that we've already seen. So let's move into the next chapter, the ethical use of AI in scientific publishing. What's important is when we talk about AI, we are not talking about the robot revolution. I really love this picture because it sums up the fears that many people have, that the AI as an abstract concept comes in and destroys or takes over whatever we have built as a scientific community and a scientific process. This fear is completely uncalled for, because yes, it's changing the landscape, but it's nowhere near as good, nowhere near as efficient, and nowhere near as smart and creative as we would think and as we need in the scientific community. But the machines are coming in many different ways. And It's not just the case in science, it's the case all over society. A couple of prominent forethinkers have spoken about AI a lot. Elon Musk has said that he believes AI will overtake humans and grow more intelligent than our species in 2025. This seems pretty close. Let's see what that prediction holds. But all the forethinkers are seeing a rapid development here as well. Similar to Sundar Pichai, AI will be more transformative to humanity as a species than electricity and fire. It's also a pretty bold statement, and a lot of that remains to be proven, but it's undeniable that the change is quite rapid. And Fei-Fei Li has said, as a technologist, she sees how AI and the fourth industrial revolution will impact every aspect of people's lives. It's not isolated to science that we're talking about. And I think most of the use cases of artificial intelligence that we are experiencing are not directly tied to that. And many times it's even hitting in algorithms and machine learning tools that use the data that we're generating every day on social media, on payments, on all the interactions that we do to subtly drive our desires and our wishes and just the availability of products and services that are offered to us every single day. When we talk about AI for research, there's a couple of reasons to use it. The first of all is the efficiency topics. AI tools can help us to be more efficient in what we do. For example, this is not the only use case, but one of the prominent examples, to more efficiently be able to scan through existing literature, to be able to take in more information in a shorter amount of time, saving us as a researcher time and resources and efforts that we need to do, because we are dealing really with an avalanche of information that we need to go through, and the pace of new generation of information is just always increasing. The second point is on improved research quality. AI's abilities can help researchers to identify patterns and make new discoveries that would have been difficult to achieve previously because we might have missed it, or because we as humans, even equipped with computers and basic computational tools, will not be able to achieve that level of computational power and that level of complexity that is needed to sometimes find more difficult patterns or smaller patterns that are in there. And it can even improve processes that use hypotheses less and less and adopt a more data-driven approach to science. And the third very important point is that the integration of AI can help in leveling the playing field across the globe. It can make research processes more efficient, and it can offer tools and capabilities to scientists around the world that can be accessed and are not limited to research-rich institutions in the rich countries. And therefore, by using these available tools, they can truly upskill people that do not have the resources available to them from their institutions to compete with other institutions as well. So in this chapter, I'd like to cover a couple of topics that cover several points in the writing of manuscripts. So there's the direct writing process. There's the process of literature review, of summarizing the landscape that is out there, for example, for your introduction, but also in terms of the discussion that you will need to write for publication. We'll cover note-taking and productivity as well, because when writing, you will be forced to integrate information that might be thrown at you at random times, not something that you can do in a concerted manner. And all this information avalanche doesn't just need to analyze, but first it needs to be captured. And also how to keep yourself on track with the writing process, how to organize yourself and how to increase your personal productivity in that sense. Also cover paper reading. That means the summarization of research results in a long text form into a shorter form that will help you again to be able to not just capture and make the connections visible between different topics, but to be able to deal with a huge amount of information that you need to in a more concise manner. And last is a little bit of an add-on, not necessarily for the scientific publishing writing process, but presentations oftentimes are also a part of it, not necessarily for the paper that you're writing, but the process of dissemination of research, for example, at conferences. And also here, AI has made a lot of progress and can help you increase your effectivity by having better presentations, but also generating them in a faster, more efficient way. For each of these 6 topics, I'd like to introduce not the general concept, but a couple of examples that you can use. In no way are these all tools that can be used in that regard, but these are some that have been shown to work, and not every tool is applicable to everyone. And here it's really about seeing what you need, but also what you work best with. So I'd rather give you a couple of examples that you can try out and see what works for you, see what doesn't. And I hope you can take 1 or 2 tools away from this today that will actually make a difference in your everyday life, and especially in the process of the scientific publishing process. So let's start with the first part, probably the most important one that we will cover in this section on the writing process, and that's the actual paper writing. There's a couple of AI-based tools that have established that will actually help you write a manuscript faster, maybe even better, and also help you improve your language in that. First of all, I'd like to cover PaperPal. PaperPal is an AI writing tool that's specifically designed for scientific writing. It offers you real-time suggestions, rephrasing, or error recognition while you are writing the text already. So it's like an assistant that looks over your shoulder in a sense and helps you improve the writing that you're doing at that time. It also offers rephrasing of sentences, because I've dealt with it. With some of the problems that I had, I tend to write way too long sentences when I do scientific writing, because I want to put more and more information in there. And it helps you to really crop those sentences as well and improve your writing style to make it easier to understand. We will have a little bit of a deep dive of that as an example later, because it's a really, really helpful tool, and to make that a bit more visible. Second, what I'd like to introduce to you is TextBlaze. A similar way, it helps you to eliminate repetitive typing issues and mistakes. In this sense, it's a different way. It helps you use to create templates that you can customize and reuse a lot of these templates again and again and again, thereby increasing your efficiency when you need to do repetitive text writing for certain research applications. The third one is Monica. It's an AI-powered extension for a browser that can chat with you about anything. So think of a ChatGPT, your own personal ChatGPT bot, that helps you to generate copywriting, to translate certain texts, to rephrase, but also to explain some of the text that you've entered in there to you. The fourth one is Grammarly. In a way, it's similar to PaperPal, and it's probably the most famous one of the tools on this page. It is a tool to improve and polish your writing. So it cleans up long sentences, it checks for grammar and consistency. However, it is trained on general everyday writing texts. It is not trained and purposed for scientific writing. Therefore, it can be good in some applications, but it sometimes is better to really use something that is really tailored to the needs that you have in scientific writing. However, it is probably the market leader in this sort of tools to improve your writing and to polish the writing that you do every day. Number 5 is CMJ. Helps you generate short texts, but interestingly also helps you generate code fragments. So in this case, if you have coding questions, this may help you in writing these sections the best way. And number 6 is Writier. It helps in completing sentences. To shorten the process of writing, it will give you suggestions with the help of AI. It can be very useful to create new content and ideas, but also on the writing side, it can help you suggest a different way to maybe write a sentence than you would have done it. If you like it, you can use it. If you don't like it, you don't have to use it. Next up are AI tools for literature review. Literature review, I think we all know that, is a very time-consuming process. It's practically impossible to find all relevant papers. And this is a hard term to also define what is all relevant papers. And one of the limitations here is when you think about it, when you search for papers, right now you are using keywords, one single keyword, maybe a combination of keywords. And that makes it difficult to find cross connections to other areas that do not consider the full landscape. And so a couple of items have come up that help you get an overview of the literature landscape much faster than would be possible with classical views. First one I'd like to cover is R-Discovery. It offers you personalized recommendations, get updates on topics that are of interest to you. It helps you find interesting papers, and it has a pretty simple to use app. So there's 150 million plus papers available on it. And it's really helps you deal with the flood and the amount of information coming in your field by really providing the things to you that are most relevant to you and to your research field only. The second one is LitMaps. This is really heavily focused on the use case of providing and generating a literature review, and it helps you find relevant papers from just a single starting point. It helps you to find relevant and linked papers that come from that are connected to that starting point. And it also helps you to categorize and visualize these papers, and nicely it also integrates into some of the commonly used reference managers. And the third one I'd like to introduce to you is CiteAI. CiteAI, in a similar way, shows you the most relevant papers that are linked to a seed paper, so to start a literature review from basically the one paper that you've received from your professor or the one review article that really defines the field. In a different way, it shows the connections, shows the links, but in a smart way, it uses what they call smart citations. And that is not just a link, but it shows if whether a paper supports, disagrees, or just mentions another paper. So it gives you a direction of the evidence that is in there, and therefore helps you to really understand the field holistically, whether there are different camps, whether there are different opinions, but also holistically understand what a certain lab or a certain organization has done in the past, what kind of work they're most interested in when you think of applying to, for example, a different institution. Number 4 also goes in a similar direction. It's called Connected Papers. It helps you to figure out the forward and backward links to a research paper. So it quantitatively shows you the relevance of the papers, and you can visualize the relationships between these papers again in the review that you do. So when you're preparing that, we now have covered tools that show you a good overview. Now it's about going through the volume. And Research Rabbit is an AI-based assistant that helps you search literature. Also shows you the relationship since you learn about your papers, but it really covers a high volume of requests. So you can do that in a very rapid fashion to go through a lot of data in a short time. Number 6 turns the thing around a little bit. Journal Finder. It helps you find the right journal to submit news. So not finding the papers, but finding the journal that might be best suited for a certain manuscript that you already have. So basically it offers you a suggestion based on the manuscript that you have already there, which kind of papers and which papers specifically are most relevant for you to consider applying, to consider submitting to. Next topic I'd like to cover are AI tools for note-taking. And here the idea is we all get research ideas sometimes, topics of interest or papers to read, or just an idea that we quickly want to write down. And oftentimes that's not when we have access to a notebook or something to really capture that. It can be during lab work. For me, it was the quiet hours in the safety laboratories where I couldn't even bring paper in, so I had no way to write down the notes, but that's when my creativity was at the highest. It could be certain times during your everyday process, during your commute, and so on. So capturing these ideas and tracking that you follow up on them, or even tracking those papers that you really, really want to read because you've come across an interesting topic, is kind of hard. And there's the importance always is how to store that, how to structure, sort, and how to find these notes again in a meaningful manner. What this does not cover in this case are digital lab books. They're not covered here today because they're very different requirements, and especially legal and compliance requirements. So that's a bit of a different field. But also one of the new features that is coming in also now with the help of more advanced AI language tools are audio transcriptions. That can really make note-taking even easier because you don't need to take a pen. You can just say it out loud and the notes will be taken for you. And that's exactly the first one that I'd like to introduce to you that I also find quite useful. It's called Otter. It's basically just a simple audio capture tool, but it will transcribe the notes that you speak to it, and you will be able to sort that to record your research area. It really, really saves a lot of time and captures that spontaneous idea that otherwise might get lost. Number two is Pocket. It's what I would call a read it later app. So it helps you organize and capture interesting articles, research papers, links from the web, and it allows you to access them later when you actually have the time to read them. You can search for it, you can find it, you can categorize it, and importantly, you can even for some kind of sources have an offline availability for those. So even when you're on transit, traveling somewhere, you might be able to catch up on that reading that you've always wanted to do. Number three is Scrivener. It's actually a professional writing software. It's very often used for novels, long texts that are being generated. And the idea is you need to tweak in these long texts, you need to keep track of the structure. And that structure and categorization is really important also for research ideas. So it goes well for your articles, but also for research projects where you can structure and relocate information. For example, a certain line of experiments goes into a certain chapter, goes into a certain project, and keeping track of that can really work well in this way. Then a simple one, Google Keep, it helps you capture ideas that you've had from brainstorming quickly. You can keep them on hand and you can turn them into to-dos and tick them off if that's the kind of person that you're. Number five is Notion. Notion works with wikis. So if you're in certain lines rather interested in working with a wiki instead of a long compendium, can really help you keep track of all of that. Number six is AudioPen. Again, here it's a transcription app. It helps you allow to capture your thoughts in real time without interrupting the flow of your ideas. And again, really, it's all about getting all of these great ideas that you have into one system where you can find them, relocate them, and structure them, and also do all of the things that you intended to do with the ideas that you've had. Now let's come to research productivity. So how can you make yourself more productive? This typical tools for keeping track of tasks, optimizing your schedule, getting reminders, scheduling meetings, staying focused as well, and not being distracted. So, wait. My screen jumped. I apologize for that. The first one is Before Sunset AI. It turns your tasks into a perfectly organized schedule, and it really does that by proposing times and blocking times on your calendar to go through the to-do list that you have, and it helps you therefore to stay organized and focused throughout the day and achieve more in any single day without being overwhelmed by the to-do list. Also gives you a lot of personal analytics on how well you did on that if you're into that personal tracking kind of thing. Second one is SciSpace Copilot. It's a Chrome extension based on AI. It offers real-time answers to articles. So it basically helps you to understand and get more insights from a paper while you're reading it. And it simplifies complex technical sense, but in the chat-like function. So it works like a personal assistant that helps you summarize research results. Number three is Avian. It is originally a tool mostly used for marketing, online marketing, so Facebook ads, Google ads, and so on. It basically provides an interface that is ChatGPT-like to interact with all of the data that you have in there. If you're in certain areas, this is more applicable, I believe, to social sciences, where you do a lot of online questionnaires and tracking of online data, this can be very useful. Just keep it in mind if that's the kind of data that you need, maybe also for public health projects. That's something they can use in that regard, probably less applicable to classic medicine and biology. Number four is Agree-To. It helps you schedule meetings with other people, so you don't need to leave your inbox, so you can easily find a slot that works for everyone. Number five is a very small app. It's called Tomato Timer. And all it does is give you a stopwatch to count down for 25 minutes. And that's the famous Pomodoro technique to boost your productivity by working in focused bursts. The idea is to work with full focus for 25 minutes. And I think it's something I agree for 25 minutes, all of us, we can focus without getting distracted by social media, by a call, by WhatsApp or whatever. And then you get a 5-minute break and you can do all of that. And it's been shown to really improve your productivity. And this is just a very simple timer that works. Number 6 is Voila. It helps you in writing these shorter pieces of text that you need, for example, emails, good content of any kind that you need, not a very complex science writing task. So spend less time on the overhead that you need to do, spend more time on the really productive things. The next topic is AI tools for paper reading. The idea is here, in science, we often struggle with the volume of papers that we need to keep up with. Many times, we don't need to read full papers to get to the points. Many times, a summary is all we need. If we are then more interested, we can still dive deeper if we find it really relevant. If not, then we did not spend more time on that. And there's a lot of AI tools that can basically summarize and give you very good overviews of scientific articles. And the first one here is Scholarcy. It's strong article summarizer, helps you to better understand them based on the summary. Interesting, it also provides you the references from it that are most relevant within these papers, and therefore suggests additional background reading for you if you want to go deeper in that regard. Number 2 is called Better Research. It integrates ChatGPT in that function and lets you interrogate websites and files and even draft some smaller pieces like emails for you. Third is Dante AI. Here it helps you to build a customized chatbot that can help you make it easy to understand more information. So basically a more customizable version of something like Scholarcy that helps you interact with papers in a certain way. Number 4 is Scribe AI. This will take complex technical texts and turn that into a process overview. So it can, for examples, when you think of scientific protocols, if you have a very complex technical text, this can summarize that into an easy step-by-step guide for you to do and follow the protocol. Number 5 is Saga AI. It's a different kind of tool that also summarizes lengthy content. It's not as well trained on scientific content compared to some others, but depends on what kind of need you have. You might need a different tool somewhere else. And number 6 is Speechify. This again makes it easier for you by not having to read a long paper, but it will turn the text into an audio file for you, and you can listen to it and maybe do something else while you're at it, or if you are in another place, for example, in transit, it can sometimes be easier to listen to something than reading a complex piece of information. And now, last but not least, let's come to the presentations. And presentations are also a key process in science, but it can be time-consuming to actually prepare these. And one of the key reasons here is the slides. We're researchers and we like to talk about the content, but it can be very time-consuming to build these slides. We're all using PowerPoint. I think many of us are very bored with it, but it's still the standard. But wouldn't you rather spend more time on the content, on the messages that you're bringing across, or the discussions you might trigger, than moving boxes from left to right and resizing fonts and so on? Because AI can take over a lot of those things, especially on the visual side. A lot of automation can save you a lot of time to focus more on content. So there's a couple of tools that are, in a sense, similar, that can do these things and can help you in different ways. The first one that I want to mention is Gamma. It creates a full set of presentations, a full set of slides into a single presentation that is based on a prompt similar to ChatGPT. You basically give it a text that you want a presentation on topic X, and then it starts with that. This can always be further optimized, change the content. It's very strong with the visual side, and you can easily have a function to share it online, for example, in meetings. A similar one, now I'll jump to number 2, is Dectopus. It also offers a similar usability than Gamma, but it asks you many more questions. So you can go into more details. So the first draft that it does of the presentation typically is better, already tailored to what you need. However, I found that the visuals on Gamma are a bit stronger. So there might be a little bit of a trade-off. I think it's a question of personal preference of what you would like to use in this kind of tool. Very similar is number 5, presentations.ai as well. Works like ChatGPT for presentations. But a couple of different things that can also help you. The second one is Miro. And what Miro does are collaborative mind maps. So sometimes you don't need slides to represent ideas and to collaborate with others based on these ideas. Sometimes mind maps, for example, are much easier. And with this, you can have a shared collaborative mind map. You can work on different topics together. If you're also in the data science programming side, it can also create some small fragments of code based on these different ideas that you have here. Number 4, design AI. This does not create classical slide presentations, but other types of visuals. So posters, logos, videos, flyers, things like that. So this can help you if you have a different kind of format that you need to present. And number 6 is Mind the Graph, which I also find quite interesting because it helps you with the figures that you need. So it easily draws figures for your papers or presentations or graphical abstracts. It has a lot of scientific illustrations and small items that you can use in different, and you can combine in different abstracts, for example. And it's an easy-to-use platform that really helps you, and it's really, again, tailored to the needs of scientific presentations and illustrations. Now, I've shown you a lot of tools. Let's go into one a little bit more detailed. I've mentioned it already at the beginning. This is PaperPal that I'd like to introduce to you a little bit more, especially with the context that we have today in scientific publishing process. PaperPal really can help you improve grammar, improve your writing style, and a lot of the challenges that we face, especially as I believe all of us here in the call today are not native English speakers. And this, as English is still the accepted standard in scientific publishing, we will not be able to move away from that. And that can really help you to write high-level academic quality manuscripts. So quickly to show that it works. It's designed for scientific writing, and it accurately detects initially any errors that you do. So even when writing or sharing text within it, it will offer you hints where you may have done a mistake during writing, and it will offer suggestions on how to fix them already. And it detects all of these basic writing errors with about 100% accuracy. Can be articles, can be punctuation, can be sentence structure, and so on. So it really, first of all, checks for correctness. But then it goes much further. It can help you with translating languages directly. So if English is not your first language and you're struggling with a certain part, you can write it in your native language and you can translate it into English at that specific point in the text already for you. Supports currently more than 25 languages. It's very simple to use, only needs a simple user registration, hardly takes a couple of minutes, and it's very easy to use also for novice writers. It also offers functionality that does not help you during the writing process, but after you've done it already. So it does a full manuscript review. It can do full language checks. It will track the changes so you know what might have been altered. And it also lists checks for the requirements from certain journals. So it checks if you have everything that you need technically to be there, all the disclosures, the figures already, if there's the right word counts, the references are there, and metadata like email addresses and list of keywords and so on is there. So just a check on if your manuscript is already complete or not. And then a very interesting feature. I'll start the video on the right already, so you can see it in real time. It can help you to rewrite and paraphrase the text that you're doing. I myself am often struggling with using repetitive sentence structures, so everything reads the same, and sometimes it's not good, especially if this is already not clear from the beginning. So it can help you rewrite it into a more refined version that fits better to the scientific writing style. but also to add variety and clarity to the text while still keeping the academic tone preserved. And another reason to do this is, of course, trimming the text. Many times we struggle with the word limits that we have for certain parts of our manuscripts, and PaperPal can trim the word numbers for you without affecting the meaning or tone of writing. And it's been shown to be able to shorten text many times up to 30%, but still being able to convey the same information only in a more succinct and a more clear manner. So this can be pretty powerful when using that. I'll quickly show the video here. And I assume typically with the technical challenges here are the audio will not come across, but please follow the subtitles in the bottom. So continuing on from that, this can be a very powerful tool to help you in the writing process, but probably the most famous tool that is used in writing right now, that also every journal is afraid of in some ways, is ChatGPT. And I can assume probably all of us have heard of it. Question is, would you use it for academic writing? At its core, ChatGPT is a large language model, or LLM. There's many others out there. Many are open source, some are proprietary. ChatGPT is probably the most well-known one, so I'll use that a little bit interchangeably. ChatGPT oftentimes just stands for any large LLM. We're just most commonly using ChatGPT. What we need to understand around this is that a model like LLM, like ChatGPT, any LLM like this, is not an intelligence. It's a tool that statistically predicts the next words in a given text. That's what it is at a core. It's stochastic, and it gives you a prediction what the most correct content could be. However, it does that extremely well. So what it means is that not often the true meaning and the context, especially for scientific reasons, is available to the large language model, and it creates sentences that sound plausible, but that might not contain the right data. It's called hallucinations. And that's the first and key limitation that we need to discuss with ChatGPT, and it's the lack of fact-checking. It's a language model that generates these responses based on patterns, but it does not have access to real-time information, so anything, I believe, beyond 2019 or 2021, I need to check the new cutoffs on the new models, it's not available to it at all. And it cannot conclusively say if, for example, a number in the text, 30% of X show phenotype Y, is correct or not. It's just as plausible that 40% or 50% could stand there. So you always need to fact check whenever you're using ChatGPT any and every information that it gets, because it could be wrong or just outdated and can be very problematic in academic publishing. Number two is bias and subjective response. It's something that you also need to keep in mind. ChatGPT learns from data it's trained on, and that can include wrong or biased information. So it might show biased behavior in a certain area, or not provide the most objective reasoning. It can be quite problematic for academic research, especially from terms of impartiality, but also objectivity. And that also links into point 3, the lack of transparency. We don't know exactly what it's trained on. It's challenging to understand how it works. It's even more challenging to understand how it works when we don't even know what it is being trained on. So it can be difficult to trace reasoning. It can be difficult to trace sources when you're using such an information, and that limits the reproducibility especially, and also the transparency when there's research being summarized, being prepared by ChatGPT or similar tools. There's also a very limited contextual understanding. ChatGPT can generate coherent responses that sound correct, but it may not fully understand the nuances of a research topic. It produces answers that are plausible, but may not be really reflecting the accuracy and depth of the subject matter. Again, here, it's really, really good at providing high-level summaries, but in science, we oftentimes go many levels deeper than the high-level summary, and then that's where it gets critical. There's also ethical considerations around it, on potential misuse, on data privacy, but also on the current regulations that certain papers and journals will use, as we've also heard in the introduction. And these regulations are currently changing with a rapid pace. So what every institution is trying to catch up with the technology, and these rules are changing rapidly and all the time. So there's a lot of ethical considerations that we need to take into account here, when to use it and when not to use it. And one of the key things now, especially for ChatGPT, this might be different with some other large language models, it's trained to be a general purpose language model, to do all reasonably well, but it lacks specialized knowledge and specialized skills in specific domains, especially when we talk about scientific disciplines. It can provide a lot of general information, that's what it's really, really good at, but it does not possess the depth of understanding or domain expertise that is oftentimes required. There's a couple of developments to improve that in terms of scientific applications. Just one example, there's alternatives for academics. For example, PaperPal is releasing PaperPal Copilot. It's basically an integration of these generative AI tools like ChatGPT that overcomes some of these limitations because it's designed and trained specifically for science. So it's not trained on general content, general writing content, but trained on published articles and scholarly literature. Therefore, it has a much higher degree of domain expertise and specialized research fields and gets much more reliable responses. And it saves you a lot of time as a scientist to do prompt engineering in order to get the results that you need on a general purpose model. Also contains robust security and privacy measures to especially safeguard your researchers. And this is a trend that is increasing, that many of these general purpose applications are now being transformed into discipline or industry specific tools. So quickly here, when we talk about AI in this process, AI can support you, but it will not replace you. You should be mindful of biases and limitations and not trust it blindly in any way. You can use it to get ideas, actively review the output, rewrite it in your own voice, but you need to preserve your academic integrity and be careful of plagiarism. Protect your sensitive information and stay up to date about what the rules are when you're using it. And now also moving to the next topic a little bit. When is it useful to get help from experts? That is especially true when you want to look at domain expertise. This is something true experts have with specialized knowledge and expertise. Experts also offer critical thinking and critical analysis, not just positive responses, but also negative ones. And they can really help you challenge the assumptions, methodology, and the implications of your finding. Experts know the context also much better than AI tools because they have the deep understanding and they can provide insights and guide you to the next steps that you need to follow. And they are validated and they are credible, which is not the case for AI tools. So feedback from experts will increase your credibility. And talking about experts, when we talk about the scientific publishing process, there are experts, and these are the professional editing services. What they do is assist authors in preparing manuscripts for submission to academic journals or other publication outlets. So they correct grammar, punctuation, spelling errors, they ensure consistency in language and style, they enhance the overall organization and the structure of the text, and they enhance the writing style in a way that helps to avoid ambiguous or confusing passages by really clarifying them. They help you also to double check on a set of eyes to adhere to specific formatting and the citation guidelines, help you with feedback. At the same time, You need to always ensure to maintain the author's voice and make sure that the content remains true to what the original content was. And really, again, offer this expert advice on how to do it right when it comes to language conventions and to scientific writing standards. So the purpose is to enhance the clarity of the manuscript, make sure it's clear, it's concise, and most importantly, it's easily understandable. That's the goal of writing always. It improves the coherence, meaning the logical flow and the structure of the manuscript. They can enhance the quality, so really overall perception of quality in writing and presentation of the manuscript. And they ensure the adherence to the style guidelines. Why is that so important? Because all of these points separately, but most importantly, all of these points together improve your chances of publication. They improve the chances to be accepted by peer-reviewed journals, especially at the high-ranking, highly respected journals. So this sounds really, really great, but they do not do all the work for you. Professional editing services support the creation of a manuscript, but the authors ultimately remain responsible for all of the content that is presented there. So professional editing services enhance the objectivity. They provide their expertise to offer fresh insight, and they take care of a lot of the technicalities. But the authors need to maintain the intellectual ownership of the paper, so retain control of all of the contents. They also need to ensure the accuracy of the content, as they are responsible for the integrity on the scientific side of the research. And this means that they need to incorporate the feedback selectively. They cannot say yes to everything. Ultimately, the authors, need to decide which editing suggestions to accept or which ones to reject. So when should you consider such professional editing services? So a couple of questions can help you guide in that. Sometimes it will help you, sometimes it might be overkill. First question you should ask yourself, is English not your first language? And with the audience today, I assume that probably most do not have English as your first language. Do you lack confidence in your writing skills? So if you're unsure about your grammar, your style, or have gotten feedback like this in the past, an editor can really help you polish the manuscript. Is it for a high-stakes publication? So for really important publications, professional editing services can be that little bit of an edge that puts you over the top into the acceptance bucket. If you're on a tight deadline, for some reason, if you're pressed on time, an editor can do these things probably much faster than you and help you get it ready in time. And also, do you need specialized editing expertise? If your manuscript requires technical, very subject-specific editing, a professional editor can help you with really valuable insights and improvements on that side as well. There are three major types of editing services which really differ in the extent of what they provide. So the first one is called substantive editing. So it focuses on restructuring and organizing the content for clarity and coherence. So ideally for early drafts or manuscripts where you think you need significant structural improvements in order to make it a sound manuscript. Second one is copy editing. So this addresses grammar, punctuation, spelling, and style issues. This is suitable for refining language and ensuring consistency when you already have a lot of the content ready. And the third one is proofreading, that basically checks for errors in spelling, punctuation, formatting. And this is basically what you do as a final review. We're not going to change the structure of the sentences a lot. You just check if everything's A-OK and everything is perfect in spelling, punctuation, and formatting. So before you go to professional editing, just clarify what it actually is that you need. When you look for editing services, you should consider a couple of points, and this is really just to guide you on how to select the best provider for you. Look for their expertise and their experience, especially in your subject area. So it can be very different if you write for a very different scientific discipline. If you can, assess the quality of the editing. Maybe you can get samples or testimonials from past clients that they've had. Look for attention to detail, accuracy, and the level of improvements that they can provide. Number 3 concerns the turnaround time. Consider the turnaround time that they offer you if that works with your timelines. Of course, also cost and value will be an important point. Look for the way they structure their pricing and consider the value that they're actually adding. Reputation and reliability, research their reputation, what has been done before with your network. Maybe somebody has used some of these providers before, but also more official reviews and ratings and their credential. If you can, assess the ease of communication and collaboration. So how fast do they respond to emails? Are they very clear in their communication? And are they willing to address any concerns that you have? You should also ensure that they follow the right ethical standards in scientific publishing, especially when it comes to confidentiality, avoidance of plagiarism, and integrity. You should also check if they are flexible in what they can offer. If there are certain services that you need, but others you don't need, see if they can work with you to really accommodate your needs and your needs alone. You should check if they offer guarantees for quality and satisfaction, as also for their revisions. So how many times do they do revisions and corrections when you're not happy with the output that they have? And also consider if there's any additional services that you need, for example, translation or journal submission assistance. May enhance the value to you, on the other hand, might not always be needed. If you have selected your professional editing service, you should also make sure that you effectively collaborate with them. And a couple of tips that can help you get a better and faster output, I've summarized here. So if you send them information, send them a polished draft already. So have them maximize the time to spend on the really important things, on the structure and the clarity, and not chasing up every typo and not chasing up every misspelled word. Communicate with them proactively if you're uncertain about certain areas. Well, if you're already quite sure what other areas are and what your needs are, what they should focus on. Utilize an effective feedback mechanism. So engage with the clarifications, ask questions about them, and try to understand why they added certain points. And always give them the complete details that they need. So what are the requirements they need to follow? What are your requirements that you have for them? Importantly, on the feedback side, this is something you should really take care of. You really get a chance to learn from the feedback. So you should see the editor feedback as a learning opportunity. That incorporate the constructive criticism and use that to improve your writing skills for future manuscripts. You should also carefully review the editor feedback and the suggestions and try to think why they're doing that. What's the rationale behind that? If there are uncertainties, disagreements, ambiguities, ask them right away to ensure that you're on the same page. You might have a misunderstanding, then if that comes up 2 weeks later in the process, it might cost you a lot of time. Always maintain the professionalism. They are professionals at what they do. That means you should both be respectful to one another, maintain a professional tone, even if you are personally not disagreeing with some of the feedback that you've gotten. And that also means defending choices when necessary, but only if you have a clear rationale and a reason why you would be defending that. Shouldn't be a defensive mechanism because you've had too much criticism. Try to understand where it's coming from, but also say no when you think it is wrong. Editing services can't do it all, and you should understand the limitations before so you're not disappointed. There's limitations on the content. Editors cannot alter the fundamental content or the findings of the research that you did. They focus on language and structure and presentation. They also enhance, but they can't guarantee publication acceptance. They improve the manuscript that you have. In the end, they cannot guarantee that you get it into the journal that you want to. And also the final say is coming from peer reviewers and journal editors. And this is beyond the scope of editing services. They don't have the influence there. That's not their role to sway peer review even after initial publication. But what is the impact that it can have if you use professional editing services? It can really enhance the readability and the engagement with your manuscript. Captures the attention, that's the important point. It helps disseminate your research, they're more likely to be accepted, more people will know about your work. They can elevate your professional image because a polished manuscript reflects positively on you as an author and your attention to detail. So it can really help you in your standing. If people know your writing and judge your writing, and the manuscript that you have built as a team with the editor is of high quality. It increases the citations and the impact of your work, and also it saves you a lot of time, because a lot of these editing tasks that might take you forever, or might also take your bosses and your reviewers forever, can be outsourced and really support that, and it allows you to focus on research and your other academic responsibilities. Again, here the machines are taking over. Is AI taking the place of professional editing services? In a sense, it's yes and no. We've seen that AI can help you in the writing process. It can help you with certain tasks, but it can also not do the full expertise, because it oftentimes lacks the nuance and the deep insights that really experts have. But there are ways to combine that. And combining AI and professional editing approaches can have a lot of advantages. This is in early stages right now, but it's getting rolled out into more and more services. So when you think about it, the proofreading part, it's something that machines are really good at. Technically, you don't need an editor, a human editor, to do that. But human editors are much better at rewriting, at rephrasing, at structuring, at that high cognitive load work. And combining these two aspects into one offering can benefit you. It can provide a affordable solution for non-English speaking authors. If you combine some steps of AI review with human editors that are working on that, because it improves both the quality and the speed. This services, just as an example, digital editing that's now also being integrated into PaperPal, does that hybrid setting, also has additional features with additional Q&As, and enhancing the entire value. The AI tools can correct the easy-to-language errors, ensures the right terminology usage, while the human editors really can focus on the style and the impeccable quality of the writing. And at the same time, it's much more affordable than using a pure human editing service. So we've seen that both AI professional editing services can help you create a better manuscript, maybe even faster, but really make sure, or well, not make sure, but improve your chances of acceptance in scientific publishing. Let's look at the other side. What do journals do in terms of AI use, but also how they interact with the manuscripts that you are submitting to them? And that's the process of peer review. So if it's accepted, it goes out to peer review. Even that process will be supported by AI applications. To get back into that again, the peer review process is supposed to validate, filter, and improve scientific work. So validating that it's of significance, that it has scientific merit. To filter that only high quality research is published and everybody is held to a very high standard. And to improve the manuscript and to work in a sense by offering suggestions for improvement that can be taken up by the original authors. Peer review is unexpectedly relatively modern as a concept. It really only took hold as a common procedure in scientific publishing after the explosion of academic journal titles. This happened sometime after World War II, where a huge amount of scientists and government funding had been poured into science in the US, especially in the stages of World War II and also after. And suddenly they needed to demonstrate value to all the funding agencies, that there's actually something that they did with the money. And that turned out to be publications. So there was a huge amount increase in publications, and suddenly people had to determine what is good and what isn't. Before that, the only peer review was actually some committees within scientific societies, so member reviews. But in the most cases, there was no form of review or validation at all. And that had been the basic concept for about 300 years of research before, let's say, the 1960s and 70s. Famous example, there's a rejection letter. This is not just an anecdote that I found super interesting. It's from Einstein. We, Mr. Rose and I, had sent you our manuscript for publication and had not authorized you to show it to specialists before it is printed. I see no reason to address the, in any case, erroneous comments of your anonymous expert. On the basis of this incident, I prefer to publish the paper elsewhere. This was written by Albert Einstein in the 1930s. And not just imagine doing that today when you submit your paper to Nature and you get back a couple of comments. It was a very different time, and it's interesting to see that the scientific community and the scientific process has changed quite a bit in that time. The problem remains, or has actually gotten even bigger, and that is the volume of scientific advances, of scientific publications. So there were about 3 million articles that were published in the past year, 33,000 journals. With the average rejection rates, this was another 33% of rejections on top. So 4.5 million articles were submitted to scientific journals. And if we think of that, we need at least 2 reviews, maybe even more, for each paper. That gives you a volume of 9 million peer reviews that need to be done every year, and that number is expected to grow 6 to 8% every year. So just imagine the sheer volume of peer reviews that need to be done, that you need reviewers for, and who is the one doing the peer reviews? That's us again as scientists. So all of us suddenly get these 9 million peer reviews that we need to do every year, and it continues to grow and grow. And peer review, as the filtering and increasing quality process that it seems to be, has to remain at a very high standard to make sure that it actually adds value to do of these peer reviews. But at the same time, while this volume has been going up, we see that there's also increase in the number of retractions of articles that has been going up over the past years massively. So there's a big question if peer review is, even if it was good at the time, is it still fit for the purpose of making sure that the scientific integrity and the scientific quality is upheld? So does it truly validate, filter, and approve when we look at these huge retraction rates? Is it really scalable? Can we cope with the massive volume? Can it really detect fraud, malfeasance, and malpractice? Is it really unbiased, and is it quick enough? So just as an example, an interesting post that had been shown on Twitter, a scientist that says, oh yeah, I finally received the acceptance notice for my article, but after 4 years after doing the research and writing. Well, at the same time, when it takes 4 years to publish the article, you're still getting judged on, sometimes in the extreme cases, on a year-to-year basis if you still merit prolongation of your contract. And these timelines don't fit to the scientific reality that we have in institutions anymore. It's, in many cases, peer review is seen as an outdated way of solving the validation problem. There's a couple of issues with it. It's time for scientists that they are spending on something that is not adding value to their own research and also not to their students that they should be tutoring. It's unpaid work, which is still highly valuable to somebody else. And this discrepancy is really, really incredible. Peer reviews take a lot of time. And we know that it has been shown that peer review is biased against different parts of the population, and therefore does not really truly only judge based on a scientific merit. Again, how can the machines come in here? Help in some areas, maybe destroy some other areas, and how can they improve this process? And again, it's not AI does it all. In peer review, there's a huge potential for a harmonious future and really a combination of the efforts. Again, as we've seen for most of the use cases, you can't do all with AI, but a combination of humans and AI typically is better than either one apart. And these automated techniques cannot really replace human judgment, but they can assist it by making it quicker, more reliable, and less biased. Oftentimes, you'll also hear the term of augmented intelligence. And the idea is here to separate what machines do well, what the AI tools do well, and what humans do well. As I've also pointed out before, machines are really good at structured tasks. And also this goes for most of the AI tools. So checklists, structure, adherence to rigid standards, cross-checking, and language quality overlap with the journal. So in many cases, what many of us could consider boring stuff, it's technicalities. If it's fitting to technical guidelines and publishing standards, that doesn't add value in the scientific way. But what humans are good at, what machines are not good at, is content, it's novelty, it's narrative, it's the experimental design, and the creativity, and really the nuance around the language use. This is changing, so these LLMs are getting better in that regards, but we're so far off from doing automated peer review yet. And this is still requiring and will require for the foreseeable future human expertise. So what is happening in real practice? So initial submissions, the first time you send a paper to a journal, the editorial office can use AI tools to quickly evaluate the standardized sets. Scope, language, structure, plagiarism, and so on, flag it, and have a very fast rejection if that is the case, or have a very fast response, which is also good. So even if you know it won't pass, it's good to know that after 2 days and not after 2 months. For the submissions that do pass, it's easier to find reviewers much more quickly, pass on the screening results more quickly, and have the reviewers focus on the content of the paper, but not the technicalities, counting words again and pointing out language and spelling errors. This is the realm of the machines. The human reviewers, the time is valuable. They should work on the content. So the process that really is followed, manuscript is submitted. When it gets received, contents is extracted and are compared to the semantic fingerprint. That means the journal scope, and check if that works. That's already a high level yes, we can move on. And it might not seem this way, but the out of scope submissions, so journals saying thanks for your submission, but this is not in the scope of our journals, are still the #1 cause of the desk rejections. And really, you want to hear this 1 or 2 days after, you don't want to hear that 2 months down the road. So once that scope check is done, then they will check a bit more in detail. So language, structure, English language quality, appropriate statements for authorship, funding, ethics, so these conflicts of interest, these technicalities that you need to cover that are important, but that are not value adding to the scientific work themselves. And also check on the references. For example, are there retracted articles in there? Are any seminal articles missed? So you need good language quality to get through that. Again, highlighting the need for using AI tools, maybe professional editing services. But there's also many other things that need to be checked here. And in this case, it will not even tell you it's rejected. It will tell you why. So you can do a very fast rework and address these concerns rapidly and still get a chance of submission. Integrity checks are a very common feature. So is everything there, but also is the language quality high enough? And these AI tools can flag that rapidly for human interaction, but they won't always make judgment calls. So for example, tortured phrases, author engineering, referee faking, image manipulation. So a lot of these malpractices can be flagged by AI tools, and that's not saying this is altered, but there's a very high likelihood that this is altered. Human expert, please check this. And with these tools, this really helps increase the quality and the validity of the peer review process to really try to catch these acts of malpractice. Also in this sense, journals, scientific publishing entities are getting better and better and better at catching these. So this also improves the value of the peer review process in itself. Why is that good for you in any stage of your career, but especially as an early stage researcher? It helps you because the streamlined initial review process reduces the wait time for you. It assures the quality that you adhere to the guidelines, saves you time down the road, but also gives you a rapid feedback loop to address the potential issues more quickly for resubmitting again, speeding up the process. Then when you move into peer review by human scientist experts, AI tools are also used in journals to find the right reviewers, because still now, without selection beforehand, 14% of reviewers that were hand-selected by an editor at a scientific journal will reject the invitation to review because they say they don't have the right expertise. And this often causes long delays because the longest part in the peer review process is not necessarily the peer review, but finding the right reviewers to review the papers. So imagine you have to write to one person, they reject, so the next person, and so on and so on. If you can find the right reviewers faster, ideally on the first try, based on what their expertise is, what kind of contents they have worked on, what kind of scientific work they've done before, that can also rapidly speed up the peer review process. And again, that's good for you. You get the best peer reviewers as a researcher that offer you the best insights and suggestions for improvement. Also gives you the best validation credibility because they are the best experts for that. It helps you network and collaborate wider. With the reviewer connections, there might be interest in collaboration later on, and increases your chance of positive reviews by having the researchers review your work that actually know the most about it. Importantly, the use of AI here supports the scientific integrity as well. AI algorithms really can efficiently identify instances of plagiarism and can flag that, for example, to the peer reviewers. Quality control checks flag potential biases, conflicts of interest that are there that might have missed, or inconsistencies to really promote rigorous research. It can also monitor behavior of the reviewers, so the anomalies or potential breaches of confidentiality or bias in the review process. If a reviewer has done several reviews and there's a certain pattern involving whether he's positive or negative, can also help uphold scientific integrity. And documenting the review process and thereby providing transparency and accountability helps to build trust in the research community. So that transparency, accountability really is something that these tools really bring to the table as well, and you cannot hide behind single reviewer comments. And the data verification aspect of it as well is to enhance the data accuracy and reproducibility of findings by a much more rigorous peer review process that combines humans and AI, helps support the reliability of research findings and support scientific integrity again. Are peer reviews written solely by AI plausible? Not really. These generative AI tools, ChatGPT, other LLMs, can be a valuable tool, but the peer reviewer still needs to evaluate the article independently because in the end, the peer reviewer also has a name that he or she is putting under the review. That's their own expertise, their own judgment, and this cannot replace the high-level skills at best of LLM tools today. What it can do, however, is provide a less biased, valuable second point of view. So again here, combining a human reviewer with a AI tool to get a second point of opinion fits to our term of augmented intelligence. It's a team of AI and of a human expert. And to come to a close here to the peer review chapter, it's still a core function of the scientific process, and leveraging AI can make dealing with the increasing volumes of submissions more manageable. It can improve the scientific standards, and it can save time and effort by using faster feedback cycles that especially benefit early stage career researchers that really have a lot of time pressure in these critical years of their careers. The use of AI tools in peer review by peer reviewers, but also by the journals, will increase massively in the coming years. And a combination of human expertise and AI-based automation will become the norm. And here again, it's a very good tip to stay on top of ongoing developments to see what is happening. And with that, I'd like to close the presentation for today. Thank you very much for your attention, for your patience over the last minutes and hours. Really enjoyed the presentation, and I'm happy to jump into the Q&A now. I will be going through the Q&A based on the votes that we are getting in. So I'll try to take the most relevant questions to you first. If you have additional questions, please add them there, and I'll go from top to bottom here. So the first question we have here is, what are ethical boundaries between substantive editing and ghostwriting? And to what extent should professional editors contribute to a manuscript before the input might necessitate an authorship credit or acknowledgement? That is a very gray area when that becomes the case. In theory, the editor would not alter the content and the basic message and the basic finding of the paper. The efforts that they're putting in should refine the work that the scientist, the original author, has already done, but not change it. There is a gray line there, because in a scientific article, the value attribution to, let's say, the scientific work itself, and then the second part, the writing process and the presentation of the research in the paper, probably I would think that the scientific work that has been done before the research, the lab work, is the most contributor, the biggest contributor to the value of it. But we should not underestimate the other part. So here, typically you will not find, where I would see it, a ghostwriter for me would basically take the data and write the entire manuscript, submit it under somebody else's name. The scientific editor would work in collaboration with the author. Here, many times I have not seen it too often, but I think it's a pretty good rule of thumb. When you think that you might, if you have to consider and do a consideration if you should include someone or not, the same goes for reference. If you think you should cite something or not cite it, when in doubt, just cite it. And here I would also argue that basically saying that the manuscript presented has been supported by a professional editing service, maybe even citing them, would go a long way. And in this case, you're being very transparent to it. Necessitating an authorship credit would heavily depend, I believe, on what stage they would get involved in. And I believe it could also depend on the publication guidelines of the journal. More modern requirements often require to list the contributions of each and every author. And if it's only being listed an author as contributed to writing the manuscript, I'm not sure if that would also then again inflate the author count. But will heavily depend, and as I've said, it's a very gray area. Next question that I have here is, what are potential ethical implications of AI-generated content, such as deepfakes, automated writing, and how can these be addressed? There's already a huge issue with this arising right now, because many journals and also many preprint servers have been flooded with AI-generated content, AI-generated papers that you could really consider automated writing. And this has led to a huge backlog in some areas, because you need to check that, and also now to the implementation of automated filter measures. So there are some tools that can predict to a high probability whether a text was generated by a human or by a LLM. However, with the increasing use of hybrid solutions, humans and AI, this will be harder to identify, but this needs to be monitored quickly. And if this is not disclaimed, and we've heard that story in the introduction as well, it seems to be an automated flag that goes up, that can be easily fixed by adding a sentence to it and really allowing that. But it just really highlights the need for filtering and the detection and filtering of such auto-generated content. And when we think of deepfakes, that's a horrifying view, in my opinion, on future of political discourse and many other things. Can also take into account anything, because we're losing the trust and the credibility of sources we thought were impeccable. When we think of the capability to have any person on a video state anything and generate that content automatically, it's horrible. Again, here, detection tools for that detect the use of AI based tools to generate such videos, to generate such content, voices, and so on, needs to be established, and they are pretty advanced already, but will need to be in a constant arms race with the developers of generative AI tools for any kind of content. Next question, how can AI-driven editing tools be trained to recognize and avoid perpetuating harmful stereotypes or biases in written content? Here, it's really about the selection of the training data, and that also needs to be carefully selected. Just now as examples, when we train on certain speech patterns, we need to be aware that most of the scientific content that we have might come from a different era, and you might need to select for certain times in order to be able to get the right content in. So for example, when you think of theory on a certain topic, it can evolve over 30 years, and that it might have a rapid paradigm shift in 1 or 2 years. And then 30 years of literature might have assumed a wrong content, and it's then been proven that this had to change. So these, not just stereotypes, but outdated information need to be checked. You can think of doing that by issuing a larger weight or importance in the training to newer findings. When we think of biases, that can be a bit more difficult, and this really needs a critical thinking of what kind of data you are putting into the system to train. There's a lot of work still ongoing on how that can be sampled to avoid bias. The question here is often one of unknown unknowns. If we don't know about the bias, it's hard to detect it, and an unknown or an unconscious bias might still go unnoticed in here. So this is something that the field is working on intensively. Next question is, how should authors properly acknowledge the use of professional editing services or AI use in their publications? Should authors keep detailed records of the edits made by professional editing services? For the second question, definitely yes. Always keep all of the proofs, all of the versions that you're sending back and forth with the editors, also for later on, just for compliance and potential trackability reasons later on. On the first question is how they should be properly acknowledged. My basic line of thinking is always rather be transparent than trying to hide something. So if you're ever in doubt, if you need to acknowledge them, start by putting them into any contributions, but then also check the requirements of the professional editing service. They will have some experience on that and might also require in their terms and service and terms and conditions a certain kind of credit, but also check on the journal side what their requirements are for disclaiming such things. Probably I'd see that somewhere in the contributions needs to be, in my opinion, needs to be mentioned somewhere, not necessarily as an author attribution. That, however, depends on the amount of contribution that they've given and the journal requirements. As our PhD journey is essentially a path towards scholarly development, fraught with challenges that refine our skills, what's your opinion on how advancements in AI tools impact our abilities as human scholars? For me, it's sometimes a bit of a two-edged sword, but it needs some introspection in order to make AI tools really truly a benefit and an important asset to us. What you want to avoid is handing over the bits that are really defining you as a researcher in your work. So the creativity, thinking of new angles, trying to figure out the deeper meaning behind something, try to figure out connections, but also, for example, the experimental planning. How would you address a certain question? These are the key steps that define you as a researcher, and these do not belong in the hands of any other AI tool. That's the true scientific mind that you are sharpening during your journey towards a PhD. When you think some of the more menial skills, and now I'm thinking of, for example, the background work, keeping yourself organized, trying to read more in a shorter time, trying to set meetings with others, trying to make yourself as efficient as possible. This is absolutely the realm where automation will be having a huge impact on yourself. On the scientific writing skills, I believe it's good to not start directly with the use of AI tools. Do yourself a favor and start writing yourself, only to learn from your mistakes at the worst. So you do not have anything to lose. If you give it a first try and you get feedback either from colleagues, from professional editing services, or get suggestions from an AI how to rewrite something, use that as a learning exercise. And that is much more insightful than having an AI start from a blank page and write everything for you, because you don't know, you won't see where you went wrong, and you won't see how you can make things better. And here again, it can be a training tool for you to make your writing skills better and improve over time. And that's also a necessary skill that you will have, even with an increasing use of AI tools, because if you get something back and you don't know how, you cannot judge if it's good or bad, then what's the use of handing it over to an AI tool? With this, I'm seeing we're at our time limit. So I'll stop here in case there are any more questions for now. Otherwise, thank you very much again for your attention. Thank you very much. I'm really honored that I could be here today. I hope there's something that you take away from this. And if there's one tool or one lesson that you've learned from today, I'll be happy. So thanks very much and have a great day.
Thank you, Dr. Oliver Grunvogel, for your insightful and enlightening presentation. And a few key points and insights that we can get from your presentations is we already learned about the various AI tools that can potentially help us in our scholarly endeavors, from writing, finding, and mapping relevant literature for our literature review. And we also learned the potential of combining human expertise and AI in speeding up the peer review process that often become the bottleneck for getting research published, and also it can support the scientific integrity. But the most important key point that I get from our discussion today is that as a scholar, we need to try to craft our scholarly work on our own, and then get feedback on it. And that's an important tips that to develop our skills and our self as a scholar. And with that, I will hand it over to our master of ceremony, Mas Yopi. And please, if there is any deficiency or maybe mistakes on my part as the moderator, I sincerely apologize. Over to you, Mas Yopi. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rian, for joining with me in this 2 days webinar with the topic of ethical use of artificial intelligence and professional editing services, presented by the Doctoral Study Program, Faculty of Medicine, Public Health and Nursing, Universitas Gadjah Mada, in collaboration with Editage. And thank you so much, Dr. Oliver. Can't wait to see you directly in Indonesia, especially in Yogyakarta City. And thank you so much also on the behalf of the committee. Thank you so much for the Editage and also our beloved participants. If I'm not mistaken, there will be kind of more than 100 participants that join us today. And before you leave this webinar, please don't forget to fill out the feedback form that already informed by the committee in the chat box. So thank you so much for joining with me, and see you on the next free webinar presented by the Doctoral Study Program, Faculty of Medicine, Public Health and Nursing, Universitas Gadjah Mada. I'm Yopi Sainat. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Oliver. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. Thank you, Dr. Rian.
Dr. Dian, Mas Yopi.
Thank you, Pak Juven. Terima kasih.
Bye-bye.
Terima kasih, Mbak Dian, Mas Yopi.